My name is Joseph, son of Heli. Not much is known about me, for I was just a simple carpenter who lived in Nazareth in the land of Galilee. And Nazareth was a simple town full of simple people doing what simple people do, for nothing great ever came from Galilee, and nothing great was ever expected to. But then there was Mary. She was the exception to the rule. If ever there was a gem in Nazareth, she would have been the crowning jewel. It was more than just her beauty, although she was exceptionally fair. It was the depth of her virtuous soul that made her so precious and rare. And it was a virtue that would be tested all the days of her life, a test that I would share with her as Mary became my wife. You see, we were cousins. We'd known each other for years. Together we'd laughed and played and shared each other's joys and tears. It wasn't long before those feelings came. You know the kind that tug at your heart and won't go away. So I talked to my father, and he talked to her father, and they agreed upon a wedding day. Well, to say I was excited would be an understatement, for she was quite the prize. I think she must have felt the same toward me. She had a certain smile behind her eyes. Just as our plans were rolling forward, something happened. I clearly remember the day when she packed a small bundle of things and secretly went away. Well, they said she'd gone to visit a cousin, an old woman who was giving birth to a son. But still, I couldn't help but wonder if it wasn't something I'd said or something I'd done, for she was gone for nearly 3 months. When she returned, I found her and we embraced. That's when I saw the look in her eyes and the sullen expression on her face. Something was wrong. I could tell. She couldn't look me in the eyes. Of course, I needed to know, and so I asked and braced myself for her reply. She was hoping to find an understanding heart when she told me that she was with child. Instead, I pushed her away. I was in shock. My mind was wild. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I wanted to leave her and run away. But her sobbing and tears tore at my heart, and something compelled me to stay. When her eyes were dry and her sobbing had ceased, she told me about the angel from God, his salutation and message of peace. She had been chosen and overshadowed, just as the angel had explained. Now she would bear the Son of God, and Jesus would be his name. Oh, I could not believe this. But I knew that Mary would not lie. And to say such a thing as this was blasphemy, a crime for which she could die. But then, what was I to do? If I married her, there was the law. What would people say? My own life was now in peril, for the birth of the child was just 6 months away. I could break off her engagement, but no, they'd still think I was the one. This was not the work of my hand. What had Mary done? That night as I dreamed, an angel came, telling me not to fear, promising if I proceeded in faith that deliverance would always be near. Who am I to argue with an angel? That would not be wise. So I took Mary to be my wife, trusting that God would save our lives. It seemed like forever before that promised deliverance finally came. Oh, you should have heard the uproar throughout the land as a tax decree from Caesar himself became God's miraculous hand. I was required to go to Bethlehem. It was the perfect plan and just in time, for I could take Mary with me and leave the rumors and suspicions behind. We'd make our home in Bethlehem just for a while till the child was grown. Then when we returned to Nazareth, they'd think the boy was our own. So we took our journey. It was difficult and slow. At best, we made 15 miles a day as we worked our way towards Bethlehem, nearly 100 miles away. We arrived at Passover time. Crowds from Jerusalem overflowed into Bethlehem. Of course, we sought shelter everywhere, but there was simply no room at the inns. And so we bedded down in the street, just one more night beneath starlit skies. And just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard Mary's painful cries. The baby was coming tonight. We had to find shelter and privacy, but where? So I turned to the only source of help I had left and lifted my eyes in prayer. That was the first time I saw it, that star shining in the night as I lit the hillside of Bethlehem with its radiant light. And there, I could see the stable caves. That was a place where Mary could give birth, but surely this was not the way the Son of God would come to earth. We found a woman to help us. Mary labored. There was a cry, and then silence in the night, followed by Mary's reassuring smile that everything was all right. Well, I had to look. I don't know what I expected to see. Something different, I suppose. What I saw was a tiny face with 2 eyes, a mouth, and a pinch of a nose. Could it be true? Was this really the Son of God, wrapped in swaddling where he lay, in a stable in Bethlehem, in a manger filled with hay? Well, it wasn't long before my doubts were answered as shepherds began to come all throughout the night, telling of choirs of angels who had sent them to behold the sight. Days later in the temple, there were others who recognized the boy. Holding him in their arms, they prophesied great praises of joy. And much later, after we found a home, wise men came from afar to see the newborn king whose sign had been a star. They bowed and worshiped the child whose coming had been foretold. Then they presented their finest gifts of frankincense, myrrh, and gold. Gold, can you imagine? It could buy most anything. Now maybe I could provide a life that would be more suited for a king. But that was not to be, for the angel came again to explain why the gold was placed in our hands. I was to take the child to Egypt and live in a foreign land. Who am I to argue with an angel? That would not be wise. So we turned our back on Bethlehem and fled to Egypt for our lives. Egypt was such a miserable place. We were despised and all alone. Cannot imagine the joy we felt when the angel said we could go home. Well, who are we to argue with an angel? Oh, Nazareth, finally home. Now maybe we could settle down and raise children of our own. And we did. Of course, Jesus was the perfect child. Unlike all the rest, he spent his extra time in the synagogue studying the holy text. Now, there was the time he got lost, or so we thought, until we found him surrounded by teachers who were listening as Jesus taught. He taught us as well in the quiet hours of the evening when we gathered as a family. We had listened to him tell his stories as he taught us about eternity. Oh, I wanted so much to be there to watch him fulfill his destiny. But I became ill and lost my strength, and I knew it was not meant to be. So I called my children in and blessed them one by one. And then I sent for Jesus, my oldest, adopted son. For the first time, I told him about the miracle of his birth and all the signs that had followed him when he was born upon the earth. Told him about his mother, the angel, the shepherds, the star, those who had prophesied in the temple, and those who had come from afar. Then I blessed him. It seemed strange to place my hands upon his head, for I felt that it should be me asking a blessing of him instead. Then I called for Mary for one last farewell embrace. I wanted so much to hold in my memory the image of her face. There were tears in her eyes as she faded from my sight. And then I heard my name being called from within this wondrous light. It was Heli, my father, and there was my mother and my family. Oh, I was so excited to see them, and they were just as happy to see me. Oh, of course I knew what had happened and where I was. I had left behind a world of vice and stepped within the realms of heaven. This was paradise. They all thought I was somebody special for having raised God's son. But I hadn't done anything more than anyone else would have done. I simply had done my best to do what God had asked me to do. And that's all he expected of me. And that's all he expects of you. It wasn't long before Jesus came. He was with us there in paradise. He'd come to teach us the gospel plan and to help us organize. For we were to take the message of salvation to every person who had ever been, so that every child of God could choose to live with him again. A few of us were given a special assignment to testify of eternal life. I was to return to Jerusalem and find Mary, my wife. Then, in an instant, it happened. I was back. All of me. I was real. I could see, I could touch, I could smell, I could feel. I had been resurrected. It was true, everything we had heard Jesus say. He is the life, the light, the truth, and the way. Well, I knew where Mary was. She was living with our son. And I found myself standing outside their door. And so I knocked. Yes, I could knock. And so I knocked some more. Oh, I heard someone coming. I could just imagine the look in her eyes. I wanted to call out her name, but no, that would have spoiled the surprise. The door opened. It was Mary. Oh, you should have seen the expression on her face. I had to catch her before she fell. I held her and we embraced. I explained that this body was a gift from her son. Everything he had told us was true, and this same gift was waiting for her when her journey on earth was through. It was time for her to tell her secret, the truth about Jesus' birth. so all mankind could have this hope of life beyond this earth. Again we parted. This time it was a more joyful farewell, and I watched her after I had gone as she slipped out into the night to go find Matthew, Luke, and John. My name is Joseph, son of Heli. Not much is known about me, for I was just a simple carpenter from Nazareth of Galilee.